Up to this point, we have seen transformer with its encoder and the decoder as a single artifact. Reality is that we can actually build a transformer only with the encoder or only with the decoder. In the case of an encoder-only transformer, this artifact is used mainly for classification or for sentiment analysis or for feature extraction. We will take the components of the encoder and we will add a layer at the end that is going to be, for instance, the classifying layer. For instance, if our encoder has an internal dimension of 512, but we wanted to classify in 5 classes, we would define the linear layer as 512 to 5. And then we would pass those 5 into the softmax, which will create the distribution, and we will pick from it the one with the highest probability, and that will be the result of our classification. And this is how we can convert an encoder only into a classifier. A very famous one is BERT. We can also take the decoder only and create a decoding only transformer. This is the typical example of ChatGPT. It will take the input of the initial prompt of the user and run it through the network until one of the conditions that we discussed is met with the completion. Examples of usage are text generation, code generation, translation, and question and answering. The best example of the decoder transformer is ChatGPT. Then we have the encoder-decoder transformer. The best example that we have is BART. In the case of the decoder-only transformer, its main capability is to predict the next word. There is a sequence-to-sequence type of task, typical, for instance, in translations or in question and answer, where you enter an input in a language and it outputs in another language. And usually, this type of task is done in an encoder-decoder type of model. However, there are some decoder-only transformers like ChatGPT that are so powerful that they have learned to do the tasks of sequence to sequence like those done by encoder-decoder transformers. So let's review the encoder-decoder transformer. In the case of the encoder-decoder transformer, we have both parts. There is an input from the user, like a sentence in one language, which is processed by the encoder. The encoder outputs the representation of that sentence in that language, and it passes that to the decoder. The decoder starts in a loop generating the translation to, for instance, French. It takes the first token, which is usually a start of sentence, and it starts creating or predicting the very next word based on the input of the encoder and the output of itself. It starts concatenating the result until it finishes the translation. Again, as I said, the encoder-decoder is usually the architecture to do sequence to sequence, but some decoders are so robust that they are capable of doing that just by guessing the next word.